Hello everyone, and we thank you for joining us for the 46th Matt's Weather Weekly Weather News. Today is Wednesday, April 18th, 2012. And as we've been doing every week for the entire month of April for Autism Awareness Month, we're talking all about autism. And what we're going to be talking about today specifically is we're going to be talking about the success that some people on the autism spectrum have had with the gluten-free, casein-free diet. But we're going to be talking about that after your WFSB Channel 3 Early Warning 7-day forecast, so let's get to that first. Tomorrow, Thursday, April 19th, partly to mostly sunny, high 72 inland, 71 at the shore. Friday, a mix of sun and clouds, milder, high of 76 inland and 74 at the shore. Saturday, mostly cloudy with scattered showers possible, especially during the afternoon, a high of 70 inland and 68 at the shore. Sunday, cloudy and cool with periods of rain, windy, a high of 61 inland, 59 at the shore. Monday, cloudy and cool with periods of rain, windy again, high 58 inland, 57 at the shore. Tuesday, mostly cloudy with a slight chance for a lingering isolated shower. High 60 inland, 61 at the shore. And on Wednesday, April 25th, a mix of sun and clouds, high 64 inland, 65 at the shore. So overall for the next 7 days, much cooler than it's been the last 3 or 4 days, with the exception of Friday, which it'll be a little bit warmer again. 76 degrees inland on Friday, 74 at the shore. Okay, and now moving on, we're going to be talking about the success that some people on the autism spectrum have had with the gluten-free, casein-free diet. Now, I must say, I've had great success for most of my life, really living gluten-free, casein-free. It's certainly helped me a lot. We'll talk more about that later, but first, let's talk a little bit more about this. Well, first we're going to talk about how someone who has Asperger's specifically can sometimes, people with Asperger's are very rigid in a lot of things, including eating. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then it's going to loop into the gluten-free, casein-free diet. Because of their sensitivity to smell, temperature, taste, and texture, children with Asperger's syndrome are often picky eaters. Some develop fetishes such as only eating beige-colored foods or foods with creamy textures. They often like very sour or very spicy tastes. Some develop chewing fetishes as a result, and as a result, they constantly suck on pens, pencils, or at times of clothing. These children also sometimes have issues with developing gastric problems such as acid reflux, hiccups, diarrhea, vomiting, or constipation. They are susceptible to celiac disease, which is caused by poor absorption of certain nutrients. The danger is that celiac disease damages the digestive system. ASPIs, which is short for someone who has Asperger's or autism, frequently suffer from dermatitis, which causes skin rashes and tissue damage in the intestine. It has also been shown that gluten can aggravate behavioral symptoms in those with Asperger's that are sensitive to these foods. It becomes a challenge for parents to make sure their ASPI gets proper nutrition. One trick that works for many parents is to change the texture of a despised food. If your child will not eat peas, try serving pea soup. If she refuses orange juice, try orange slices. Most clinicians, I think I pronounced that correctly, believe that the less you indulge food fetishes, the less entrenched they become. If an ASPI creates a rule that no foods can touch on my plate, I'm sure you've heard that before. Some people, they just can't let foods, never mind people who have autism, sometimes people just can't let different types of food on their dinner plate touch. But if an ASPI creates a rule, no foods can touch on my plate, it can easily become a lifelong rule if parents do not intervene. One promising food therapy is the gluten-free, casein-free diet, or abbreviated GFCF diet. The theory behind it is that a child with Asperger's syndrome cannot digest casein, found in dairy, or gluten, found in grains. It is true that undigested molecules of these substances frequently show up in their urine samples. These amino acid chains, called peptides, affect neurological function and can worsen a child's symptoms. Peptides may have an opposite effect on some children. Parents begin the diet by first eliminating either the casein or gluten food group. No gluten means no bread, rye, barley, rye, oats, pasta, all kinds of flour, food starch, biscuits, cereals, cakes, donuts, pie, pretzels, pizza, croutons, and even crumbs stuck in a toaster. You can substitute these with gluten-free products, which in today's world. 10 years ago, when I kind of really started on the gluten-free, casein-free diet, it was much more difficult to find gluten-free items to substitute with. But in today's world, there are a lot more health food stores out there. It's a lot easier to find gluten-free, casein-free foods that really don't taste any different, if not taste better than the food that contains gluten or dairy. Next, you eliminate all dairy products, including milk, cheese, goat's milk, and cheese, ice cream, yogurt, most margarines, puddings, and so forth. If you eliminate the dairy group, you may also have to give your child calcium supplements. Now, very true. You know, if you don't drink milk, you don't drink things that naturally have calcium, magnesium, and certain things like that in it. It is very important to make sure you supplement with calcium, magnesium supplements. It's important that you make sure you're getting those essential nutrients in. Really, probably most people in America should be taking some sort of a multivitamin every day, but it's very important for someone who's on this type of a diet to make sure that they are keeping up with supplementation and making sure they're getting all the essential nutrients. Although a lot of the foods that are gluten and dairy free now, it have a lot of these things in them too. You can get them, you know, just if you just eat right, it's not an issue. I'm getting ahead of myself here. You need to cut out the trigger foods, including chocolate, food colorings, caffeine, and peanut butter. The gluten-free, casein-free diet website offers all kinds of resources for parents, such as cookbooks, food products, and DVDs. Many parents believe that the gluten-free, casein-free diet really helps their children. In an unscientific survey of over 2,000 parents who tried it, most saw significant improvement in 5 of these parents reported miracles. Research into diet and vitamin therapy for children with Asperger's syndrome is very sketchy at this point. Nevertheless, many parents try them. One scientific study of alternative therapies found that over half of all parents of children with autism spectrum disorders have tried diets, herbs, or vitamin therapy, and 72% felt they were worthwhile. Herbs and vitamin therapy, that kind of a thing, you know, a lot of people go to see naturopathics, acupuncturists, people like that for. I see an acupuncturist regularly, get really great progress out of that. Many parents swear by the gluten-free, casein-free diet. Others prefer the Ferngold diet or mega vitamin therapy. You can buy supplements of herbs and vitamins specifically made for children with Asperger's syndrome. Such supplements often include calcium, fish oil, omega-3, 6, or 9, vitamin B6, HNI enzymes, and DMG or diglyphosine. If you use these diets and therapies, the best thing to do is keep written records of how often your child tantrums or exhibits other behaviors. This can tell you if the therapy is working. There have been a few scientific studies of the gluten-free, casein-free diet. In one 3-month study of 15 children ages 2 to 15 years old, there was no difference between the children who followed the diet and those who did not. However, researchers at the Loma Linda Medical Institute in California concluded that the diet was mostly helpful and improved nonverbal cognition, but that more double-blind studies are needed. Many parents have tried the gluten-free, casein-free diet or Ferngold diets and have found that they were not worth the effort. These diets make it extremely hard to buy regular grocery foods or eat in restaurants, which is obviously very true. Really, I'm going to just kind of put a little bit of a personal perspective on this. Our neighborhood supermarket, they do have some gluten-free, dairy-free things. They do a little gluten-free, dairy-free section as more and more people kind of try to eat this way. But there's like a Trader Joe's and a Whole Foods that's maybe like half hour, 40 minutes away from where I live here. And my mother, she takes a trip once a week to those supermarkets specifically just to have access to gluten-free, casein-free, dairy-free, soy-free products. And it's really, for me and my brother anyway, it's really worthwhile to follow this diet. Not only for autism spectrum reasons, but for health reasons as also. And I'll share some of that with you, I think, next week. But now we're going to go through, we're going to talk about a few specific success stories that some children with autism have had. We're going to read them right now. My child's name is Oliver, and he is almost 21 months old. We were told he has autism last Tuesday. We started the gluten-free Casin diet on Easter Sunday, 5 days later. He has been on the diet for almost 2 days, and I have already seen dramatic results. Oliver had never handed me anything. Anytime he was done with something, he would just drop it on the floor. But yesterday, when he wanted his drink, he handed me his cookie to hold for him while he drank, instead of throwing the cookie on the floor. Oliver also has never pointed to anything to communicate with us, except for his mouth, which is how he tells us he's hungry. This morning, after 1.5 days on the diet, he has pointed to his rear to tell us he has a poop in his pants. Oliver has always flapped his hands while he walks, but he stopped doing that last night after around 26 hours on the diet. Only 26 hours on the diet, and they're already seeing results, which is pretty amazing to me. He walked with his arms swinging by his side now. Since starting the diet less than 2 days ago, his selective deafness is nearly gone. I can get his attention by saying his name almost always, even when he's focused on something he really enjoys. Before, I would say he was 50-50 on that. I truly believe that for some children, the diet is a miracle. And there's also something to note that for a lot of children, this is a miracle diet. Or I shouldn't even say diet. This is a miracle way to eat for really their entire life. And for other people, it doesn't work. For other people on the spectrum, it doesn't work. You really just have to try it and see if it works for you, see what works best for you. Okay, now we're going to talk about a child named Todd. Our son Todd is 25 months old and he's been on the diet for 2 weeks. Todd was diagnosed with PDD-NOS. If you remember that, what that was from last week, I'm sure you do. A month ago. Since he has been on the diet, he is a completely different child. His eye contact has improved with strangers, and he is responding to his name more often, if not always. Just today, we were in a toy store, and he was interacting with a complete stranger, making eye contact if fleeting. In repeating words when prompted, he has noticed his toys for the first time, such as the ball and drum, which have always been available to him, but of which he took no notice before. He is much more verbal, babbling in ever more complicated ways and using some words in a limited fashion. 3 months ago, he was absolutely silent, and today he said bye to a speech therapist, something we couldn't have hoped for just a few weeks ago. He no longer engages in some of his old repetitive behavior. He is more curious about his home environment and explores new things more than he ever did before. Generally, he is much more focused, much more active, and we would say a much happier boy. We had hoped that Todd would be a good candidate for the diet. He had self-selected almost exclusively to dairy products. We never noticed a particular affinity to gluten-rich foods, but we have removed gluten from his diet as a precaution. The very first day after we eliminated dairy, he was calmer and more focused than he had ever been. That night, however, the withdrawal began, almost like an addict going cold turkey. He had cold sweats and a fever that lasted for a day or two, and since then, his progress has been accelerating almost every day. So a lot of times, especially if you've kind of been on, you kind of just been eating, you've been kind of hooked on dairy and gluten foods, and then, all of a sudden you're kind of taking that out of your diet, there is kind of like a withdrawal period. But after the withdrawal period, progress is really taken off, and that's really the way it is with most people. Okay. My name is Janine. My son's name is Isaac. He'll be 5 in October. He was diagnosed with high-functioning autism March 30th, 2006. I learned about the diet at the Walk Now Marathon for Autism. A man at one of the information booths talked to me about this and how the gluten-free Casin diet has helped him. I wanted to try it because I was intrigued at anything that was within my power to help my son and not be at the mercy of help from a therapist, for which we are still on the waiting in the eligibility process here in the state of California. So I was happy to try something that I could do to help. My mother-in-law found this website, and it found this website, and it helped me to get started because it was overwhelming. I started easing him in on the diet about 3.5 weeks ago. I'll list the symptoms he had before the diet and the improvements we are seeing now. Now, there's quite a few symptoms listed here, so I'll only read a few of them. Biting his arms when he would get upset. We have now not seen this since starting the diet. Terrified at the very sight of dogs. Instantly scream. Now that he's on the diet, he's now, even with some coaxing, petting dogs on the back with much interest in the dog and pride in himself. He would scream just as loud as he could when he would get upset or frustrated. Now he has expressed with words his feelings, like, "Don't do that. I don't like that." He's even said, "That hurts my ears." This is huge progress. He has never asked a why question before. The other day he asked, after I put something in the fridge, "Why are you putting it in the refrigerator?" This is so exciting. This is, parents getting excited that the child is really making progress all over just adjusting child's diet. Last Wednesday, now here's an interesting thing. After this child, Isaac, went off gluten and dairy for a while and, major improvements, last Wednesday we decided to go out and get some ice cream. We thought sherbet didn't have any dairy and that it would be all right. Well, never assume is the lesson. So the sherbet did contain some dairy. The very next day after he had the sherbet with the dairy in it, he was screaming at everything and not expressing himself with words. Everything was a full-blown tantrum, and I knew there had to be something that triggered it. The sherbet was the only thing he ate that was out of the ordinary. Sure enough, there was an amount of cream put in the sherbet. Since him eating the sherbet, he has yet to go number 2, poop, again, since he had, and he just screams about it like before. The effects of that sherbet are long when dealing with that area. We are still seeing progression, except for that following day. He's now back on track with everything else. It's just seeing, so it's quite amazing. And then so he ate the sherbet with the dairy in it, and it kind of threw him off for a day or two. But obviously he's still eating gluten, dairy free. Other than that, he kind of just went back to the way he was before, when he was eating gluten and dairy free before he had the sherbet. It's amazing what just changing eating can do. Okay, and that about does it for the 46th Matt's Weather Weekly Weather News. Next week, on the 47th Matt's Weather Weekly Weather News, and our final week that we'll be talking about autism, I'll talk about my successes with the gluten-free, casein-free diet, and we will also talk about other ingredients kids on the spectrum may want to stay away from as well, because there's more than just gluten and dairy that can affect behavior in not only children on the spectrum, but people in general. We hope that you join us then. If you have any questions or comments or anything, do not hesitate to email me at mattsweather1@aol.com or any other way that you know to get in touch with me. We'll see you next week.